For today's review, we are looking at the line art Mr. Freeze from the Fighting the Frozen Page Puncher wave, and this is my first time recording a review for a line art edition figure, mainly because I don't have a whole lot of figures in terms of this repainted style in my collection. The only one I've had for the longest time is the Black Manta from the Aquaman Page Puncher wave, which I usually just keep in the packaging. I've never opened the figure because that's the only copy that I have. As for this Mr. Freeze, I was very fortunate to find this at my local Ross for $6. And I didn't just find one, I found two of them. And this was one of the rare occasions where I just decided to buy both of them so I can have one that I can open and display with my action figure shelf, and one that I can have in the packaging and display it on the wall alongside some of the other figures that I just keep in their packaging because I just don't feel the need to take them out. So yeah, alright, with all that said, let's move on to what is included with this figure. So let's start with the most obvious item. He does come with the card, and as you can see, there is this beautiful comic book artwork, which of course is the variant cover for the comic book. It features all four characters in this black and white color. Pretty cool. And on the back side, you do have a read-up, which is the summary for the story. And I've already read this before in the past, so I'm not going to reread it again, because I did do a review on the entire wave of Fighting the Frozen. So if you want to check that out, it is on the channel. Shameless self-plug here. So there's that. And that's the card. For the next item that he comes with, it is, of course, the accessory that he has, which is the freeze gun and canister combination sort of thing here, which we will talk more about later in the review. So there's this accessory. And for the next item, it is the DC figure stand, which is always included with these figures. So there's this one. And last but not least, since this is a page puncher, he does come with a comic book, and as you can see, there is the variant cover, which is very beautiful. I like the black and white color here. And yeah, as for the inside of the comic book, it is exactly the same story. Everything's the same, so here it is. Everything's all colored. Just to show a few more pages, there's Batman, there's the whole, Frozen stuff happening here, so yeah. Alright, that is the comic book, and that is all that is included with this figure. So the draw for this figure is to represent sketch line art, which is not entirely accurate for this figure, because if you look at the entire paint detail of the figure, let me just zoom in right here, you can see how it's very simplistic. Everything is very dumbed down. There's no line art in any ways. And if we look back at the comic cover, as you can see right here, look at the details with Batman. It is very much detailed with line art. And the reason why I'm using Batman as an example is because, unfortunately, with this comic cover with Mr. Freeze, you can't see his full body, so we don't actually know what he looks like in this style. But Batman's a good example. Look at the line art detail that are just there throughout the entire design. Where is this sort of detail with this repaint? So, in a sense, these line art repaints are not really worth the full price because they don't actually deliver on how they're supposed to look in execution. So that's the first thing that I want to point out, because it's not great. Now, in terms of the look, this looks like a black and white animated cartoony design more than a sketch art. And if you look closely at some of the elements here, and if my camera can focus because it's not doing its job, look at how cartoony it feels. The thick lines here that are supposed to be the line art, these black painted areas that are very blocky and chunky. It feels like this is supposed to be cell shading more than actually being sketch art of some kind. So yeah, it just feels very cartoony in every sense. Now, the other interesting thing about this figure that I do like about it, even with these flaws, is the fact that it's pretty cool to see some of these details that are sculpted that you saw on the original figure painted in a different way or just left in one generic color. For example, this entire design here for whatever this is on his wrist, it is all white. And it feels like a semi-prototype figure. You know those type of figures where they're just not finished painting them and they're just like a prototype state? it kind of feels like that. And as you can see on the thermostat areas right here, I like the fact that they did paint those in the black and white, so that's pretty nice. And for the padding right here for his knees, it's just all white. You do have some details down here as well that are painted in the black. Same thing on this side. And for the ice part of his shoulders, it's an interesting choice that it's in this black and white color as well, because on the original figure, they kind of messed up with the colors of it. It's supposed to be white, but they use gray for some reason. And for the back side, as you can see, it is just black and white. There's not a whole lot of like detail shading going on the back side or any of the lines to begin with. And that is one of the biggest concerns here, because there are a lot of areas on this figure that could very much use these thick lines, if you're going to call that line art. Why is it not present on here? Right? So, really strange. And this is a good segue into his accessory that he comes with, which is the freeze gun. You can see that that same sort of simplistic pattern is also present here, right? There's only one area that's painted black on the gun part, and then for the canister, it's like black and white in this half and half color. Now, all the sculpted details are still there from the original use of this accessory, which is nice to see in this different color. But there's a lot of areas that could have been given this sort of line art. For example, the tubing area, right? This is all textured. Why couldn't there have been some black paints painted in these areas in this sort of line art style? Or, for example, this texture right here with the legs, right? They could have easily done some sort of shading right there. So it just feels like a lot of the areas of this figure is really left to people who are customizers, and if they even want to customize this figure to make it look like accurate line art sketching, they have to put in a lot of work themselves. And that's pretty much most of the aesthetics that I can point out with this figure, because now this is where I want to compare it to the original so you can see the differences. And let me just zoom out. And now let's put the original here. And one thing that is interesting between these two figures is the fact that there are some areas that are painted on this line art version that is not painted on the original. It's a very tiny detail, but I just want to point it out. So the first and most obvious thing here is the sides. So as you can see, let me just zoom in again and let me focus the camera. Come on, focus. There we go. As you can see right there, you see that little like thermostat thing on the original? It's all silver. There's no paint details there. But for this repainted version, they actually painted it. So why couldn't they have done it on the original one? I don't know. And then the other interesting thing too is that even though this is all like white paint for whatever he's wearing on his wrist, on the original one, it's silver metallic paint, but the meter bar, whatever that is, they didn't paint it either. So there's like these missing details that are just left the same in some ways, but just in different colors. Another detail that I also want to point out is the fact that, as you can see right here with this part of the sculpt, you can see that there's a black dot in the center right there for this detail. I'm assuming that for this original one, it's supposed to be a red dot to indicate something similar to what you see with the chest design. And there is the difference right there with those sort of sculpt details right here with that one. And speaking of the ice detail, as you can see on his shoulders, look at the differences, right? Like this is all black and white, and then this one's like mixed in with the sort of gray color, which I'm assuming is supposed to be a white color, not a gray color. And for areas that are colored in blue, as you can see, this is like black and white. And the other interesting thing to point out is their helmets. So this has a more glossier finish, and then for this one, it's like a matte finish. But yeah, you can see the differences there, right? Like this has a more metallic looking paint. This is more flatter on the paint. And then for the back side, you can see more differences right there. Most of it is just gray. This one is like black and white. And then for the knee pads here, it is pretty much different as well. But of course, with these two versions, when it comes to which one you want on your shelf, it's for sure the original one, because the original one is the one that looks better. And now let's move on to the accessories, because this is where I also want to compare these two accessories. So let me just zoom the camera back in. And as you can see with their accessories, let me just hold them in the correct way. Okay, there we go. You can see the details are quite different as well. It's very metallic for the original one. And the tubing details on this accessory is all silver painted, right? Even the gun right here has the blue parts that are painted, right? So not a bad color. But between the black and white version, it is very different. So it does stand out. Like, most of the details are still there, and on either version they do stand out, but it feels very flat once again, because some of these areas could have been painted better. So you see the same problem repeated on the black and white version. And that is pretty much the comparisons with the canister. Let me just do a quick comparison with the guns as well. So as you can see right there, there are the differences between the colors, but the sculpt is entirely the same. Here they are with their accessories equipped to them, and as you can see, this is what they look like with it on. So here's the side comparison, right? So there's that. Here's the back part of the figure with the accessory equipped. Let me see if that can fit into frame. There we go. So yeah, pretty simple. Most of it is the same, but in this different color. And yeah, having these two figures in my collection now of the same exact character in the same exact mold is not bad. You know, they do look nice together. I mean, if you want to use this repainted version, like he's some sort of maybe, what do you call it, like a henchman that works for the original one, you could probably do that as well if you want to have that sort of imagination. But overall, is this a repaint that you need in your collection? Not exactly something you need per se, but if you do like repaints in some ways, then yeah, it's not bad to pick up. Of course, only if you get it for a very low price, because again, it is not worth paying full price for this figure. So hopefully you do have that luck where you can find this at Ross, or you're just able to find this elsewhere for around the same price that I got it for, if you really do want this repaint. But I would not go out of my way to pay full price for this repaint, because it's not worth it. If you're going to pay full price, you might as well just get the original one, because this is way better to have on your shelf than this repaint. All right. Well, if you found today's review on this Mr. Freeze Line Art Edition informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And I hope you look forward to the rest of December, because I have a lot of videos planned for this month. And I do apologize for the lack of uploads last month. But, you know, it was mainly because I was planning on what I wanted to do for December to end off the year in a strong way, and the fact that I wanted to take a break. So with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.